Mike McCool here. I'm in the Royal Examiner studio, and with me today is Tim Ratigan. Tim is well known in our community. He has been doing a lot of community participation at our local town council and board of supervisor meetings throughout the years. He has when he has an opinion, he lets people know. Is that a polite way of saying?
Yes, that's very accurate, Mike. Yes, it is.
And he's run over the years. He's run for a couple political offices. I can remember that. We were talking the other day, and he came in and he asked me to quote him on some signs. And I said, sure, we can do that for you. We make some yard signs for you. And I said, so what's all this about? And he says, well, I have a project I'm working on, and it's I want to show our community support for our law enforcement. So let's show the sign.
Yes, absolutely.
And so, Mark, you can zoom in on here. This is a yard sign. We're going to be talking about what these signs are all about. And he supports the local police. But then look on the other side. We also support our Warren County Sheriff's Office. So I think so now we can talk about the signs.
Yes.
And we've shown people what they are. So what are we talking about here, Tim?
Well, I'll start with, how it all came to me.
You had this vision at 2 o'clock in the morning, huh?
3 o'clock in the morning, actually. No, it was not a vision.
Okay.
I'm rather involved politically, and I follow the news. And a lot of times I make the mistake of taking it personally. Well, I don't think it's necessarily a mistake because, I served in the military and I love this great country of ours, and I'm not too happy with the path it seems to be headed down. So one evening, or one night, or should I say one very early morning, I wake up and, I have to do some business, and then I come back and I decided to look on Facebook. And I saw a couple of video posts that just absolutely chilled me to my bones, and I couldn't get to sleep. So I got up and went out into the living room, and I just sat in my chair like I usually do, and I says, something has to be done. I mean, it's to the point now where it is very deadly and very dangerous for any law enforcement officer to get up out of bed, don his uniform, say goodbye to his family, and go out and do his job. And his job is to protect and to serve. And his family has to sit there, go about their daily lives and worry about whether or not his or her spouse is going to come home, or father or mother is going to come home after they're done with their work. And well, every time you hear about, a law enforcement officer being shot, a law enforcement officer being killed in the line of duty, they are harassed, they are ridiculed, they are teased. I mean, it's just gotten to the point now where it's becoming so intolerable that our good, hard-working, loyal law enforcement officers are throwing their hands up in the air and saying, I'm done. And it got to me. And I says, we have to do something to not only to show our law enforcement officers, our local law enforcement officers, but we have to take a stand for law and protection. And I decided that we'll start with making some signs, and that's probably one of the most visible ways of showing your support. So I started thinking in my head, and I said, I know the person to go to, so I called Mike, and we kind of tossed around a few ideas, and I told him, I said, I want it to be a two-sided sign. One for the police department, one for the law enforcement, for the sheriff department. That way when you're driving down the road, whether it be in town or out in the county, regardless of which way you're driving, at some point you're going to be able to see that that house or that business or that member of the community is making a very public statement that they support their local law enforcement. And then I said to myself, I'm thinking to myself, we can do something more. And so wasn't too long after that, I believe it was yesterday, where I got an email from a good friend of mine. He calls himself Coach Mac, and he said that he was going to do some sort of law enforcement support thing at the gazebo on Friday, July the 3rd.
Yes.
And he wanted to know if I could, come over and, help him in some way. And I told him, I says, I'm sorry, I can't do it. I says, I got to take care of my mom. I says, however, I do have some signs that I would like to offer you. So, do you know any of the details of this?
Yes. Yes, this event is going to be going on at the gazebo, 5 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. It's really not, it's a community gathering. It's not anything planned and a big event with speeches and everything. It's a community gathering to come and show your support for our local law enforcement officers. And I think that's when people show up. You'll have your signs, no telling, and it's a pro-American event. And bring your flags.
Yes.
I mean, it is July the 4th, and I think that this is a very patriotic event and a support for our local law enforcement officers. And I think that's, it's free, open to the public. Bring your chair. There's a whole lot of who knows what's going to go on, and we'll post some other details in the story here as well. But I think that's showing that other people in our community are concerned about this issue that our law enforcement officers, there's this movement through the country to defund the police department. It goes back to the question, who are you going to call?
Yes.
We're going to call a social worker to come and take care of our policing problems. That's definitely not going to work, is it?
No, it's not. And there's a good reason, obviously, to be concerned. This morning I was looking up some stats, and I found a website. It's called Officer Down Memorial Page. And it's to honor all of the law enforcement officers killed in the line of duty. So far, to this date, there have been a total of 115 deaths across the country. Now, these are not necessarily all, related to people coming out and shooting them and that sort of thing. It's called line of duty deaths, total 115. And I'll just go over a few items here. 9/11 related cancer, aircraft accidents, automobile crash, COVID-19, duty-related illness, gunfire, gunfire inadvertent, I guess that's an accident or something, heart attack, motorcycle vehicle, struck by a vehicle, vehicle pursuit, and vehicular assault. For the state of Virginia, and for those who are interested, any officer who is killed in the law or in the line of duty, it's a tragedy. But we do have, thankfully, one of the lowest numbers. According to this website, we've only lost 2 in the state of Virginia. The state that carries the most, can you take a guess, Mike?
Illinois.
No.
Oh.
No. Not even New York. It's Texas.
Well, Texas is twice the size of any other state.
Yeah, Texas has a total of 22.
Wow.
Yeah. Now, if you look at the months, okay, January was a pretty high month for losing law enforcement officers in the line of duty. 12. Followed by February of 9. Let's see, March, a total of 16. April tops the list at 38. And May is 24. June is 15. And with the exception of February being 9, of course, we are only into the 2nd of July.
Right.
July already has 1. So that kind of gives you an idea of the situation that we are dealing with. So,
well, they've taken a bad rap here in the news, and we know the statistics are blown out of proportion as far as bad police officers. I mean, there's bad people in our community, but we're talking a very, very small amount. And the way the news and the way some groups are emphasizing it, it's like every single police officer is a bad egg, and we know that that's just not true.
yes.
And you can see them standing at these protests toe to toe with demonstrators, knowing and taking all sorts of abuse, but they're standing there calm and collected and taking it. And you know that most people would not do that, and that reflects back on the training.
I certainly would not.
That reflects back on the training that our police officers have, and law enforcement officers. And the Sheriff Butler mentions that quite often, that he's training his officers in all sorts of things, but training is important so that when you're given in a situation, you know how to react. And if you really think about it, you know darn well you as an individual would not participate or stand there and take that kind of abuse. And it takes somebody with a strong fortitude to be able to do that. And I bless them that I think that that's really showing the dedication to the cause, so to speak. They're there to protect and serve, and they've sworn an oath to do that. And I think that as a community, we need to support our law enforcement and our first responders. You know, it's not just police officers.
No,
it's the fire and rescue.
Yeah, I had there was not that long ago where I myself had to call 911. It was a Sunday afternoon. I was taking a nap, and my son comes running in and says, you know, there's mom's not responding. And my wife is an insulin-dependent diabetic. So I got up, and she was just sitting in the chair staring off into space.
Right,
I tried to rouse her and tried to get her, to consume, some orange juice, and I knew that it was just a matter of minutes that she was going to go, into a diabetic coma. So I just called 911 and said, I need some help. And within minutes, they were there, and they took over. So the thought of it getting so bad where the radical segments of the community come in and just wreak havoc with our law enforcement departments to the point of where they throw their hands up and walk away. It's even gotten to the point where the very city and the very towns and the very councils, elected officials that those law enforcement officers depend on to keep their departments going, they've even gotten to the point where some of them are turning against them.
Right.
And that tells us a very grim story that, something has to be done, And there's another concern I have, a very grave one. Several years ago, Board of Supervisor member Thomas Sayer broke with his tradition of not voting for a tax increase and voted for a tax increase that year so that we can hire more resource officers in the schools. Now there seems to be a call to get rid of that very valuable asset, in our schools, And, I'm here to tell you that, I'm going to fight tooth and nail to make sure that Warren County keeps its resource officers, because whenever I see a story or whenever I, see a video on Facebook that has to do with our resource officers in our schools, it's always a very positive experience, So
I know the example of the shooting that they had in Las Vegas. People are running everywhere, and here's the police officers running towards the shooting. And the 9/11, people are running out of the building, and here's our firefighters rushing into the building.
Yes.
And so our first responders, our police, the people that protect and serve us, that's a responsibility that just not everybody can do. So
Yeah.
I think we owe them this support, and events like Friday night at the gazebo at 5 o'clock. So be sure you come and show your support. Also, now you're working on an event coming closer to our
National Night Out. It's really, just rattling around in my head. I'm thinking to myself, I says, we lost 115 so far. Obviously, that number is going to go up. And how many other years have gone by where that number has gone higher? I haven't done any research on it, but So what I would like to do is I would like to institute or create some kind of event where it would include a candlelight vigil in honor of all of our first responders, our law enforcement officers, our fire and rescue, who have died in the service of their duties, or, So I'm going to be reaching out to the chief, and I'm also going to be reaching out to the sheriff to see if there's some way we can combine the two,
Sure.
or what. But I do believe that the community needs to come together, stand together, and really remember our law enforcement officers who have died in the line of duty. Warren County also, or Warren County and Front Royal has also lost how many law enforcement officers? I know of one.
All right.
I was a junior in high school when Sergeant Smedley was gunned down. And, we don't want to forget that either.
Right.
Yeah, so.
Right. Well, we'll keep our law enforcement and our first responders in our prayers. So when you see these signs around the county here, we want you to, give a little salute there and remind that, we do support our local law enforcement officers. These signs, he's ordered quite a few of them, so and he'll be coming up with a program of sharing these in the community. So
it's actually quite simple. I've already handed 10 or 15 to the local Republican committee. I will offer the same to the local Democratic committee as well.
And this is nonpartisan.
No. Most certainly, keeping our law enforcement in place and showing support and respect for them is not partisan. Okay, so just remember that. He brought 10 or 15 of them to the last Republican Party committee meeting, the chairman, John Smith, and he said they went over really well. So I'll be offering the same opportunity to the Democratic committee and anybody who would like to have a sign to display. Whether you're a business and you want to put it in your window, or whether you're a private citizen and you want to put it in your yard. Right. I ask that if you do request one, that you actually do display it, because we do have a limited number of them. But just find me on Facebook and send me a message. Say, hey Tim, I'd like one of those signs, and then I'll work to get it to you.
Right. We'll put his contact information here in the story, so you'll be inundated, we hope, with, and these signs will go over. We'll have to get more.
We'll have to order more, yeah. So we're going to have to figure out how to raise money for more.
Well, I'm sure, I'm sure there's other like-minded people in our community that will get a hold of you and and support it and maybe help you financially underwrite this project too.
Well, I do know that the chairman of the Republican committee, when he responded to me as to how well they went, he says, how much are they? Where can I order them? Because I'd like to order some for the committee. Right. So it's starting. So
it'll take a movement. So if you have an interest in this, which I'm sure that most people watching do, let's support our local law enforcement and our first responders. Again, there is a program this Friday night on July 3rd at the gazebo at 5 o'clock to 7:30. You can find the details out. We'll stick them here below the video or above the video. And you'll be able to do that. And keep an eye out. We'll keep you posted on the event that Tim's going to have as we get closer to the National Night Out. And again, show your support get a sign, put it in your front yard, put it in your front of your business, show that you support our local law enforcement officers. It's great. Tim, having you come in, I really appreciate it. And thank you for this community support. It's good for some people to champion our community, champion our law enforcement, and I think and when we have something like this, stand up and let your voice be heard. I really appreciate it.
And I like the fact that you and I are both wearing blue.
That's right.
I kind of combined the upcoming 4th of July with the blue.
Sure.
So, yeah.
We support the blue.
And there's another movement out as well. I think it's kind of a national movement that says, I believe it's called Back Up the Blue or something like that. They've got a Facebook page, and you should really check that out as well. So.
All right. Again, thanks again for coming in.
And happy Independence Day.
Oh, yes, that's...
Absolutely.
Oh, let me give a plug for this. On Sunday, July 5th, we'll be having a reading of the Declaration of Independence at the courthouse lawn. The Sons of the American Revolution will be in dress and will come and be reading. And so it's an interesting thing, too. That's how the Declaration of Independence was presented. It was a public reading back in those days. So please come out, share that part of history with your children. It's a great event to hear those words spoken by a patriot.
Speaking of public readings, George Washington actually took time to read it to his troops. So that was...
there you go.
That had to have been a very moving experience. I'd like to travel back in time to actually witness that.
Right, and we don't, we think of fireworks and picnics, but, we really need to think beyond some of our holidays and look at the historical events that really happened that allow these things to happen, that allow the protests to happen, to allow the rights to that we do have. These are so. It's
and
great.
We also need to remember for November the 3rd that while we are celebrating Independence Day, there's a large number of people who are trying to take it away from us.
Right. Be sure you register and vote November 3rd.
Yes, absolutely.
Again, thanks again.
Okay,
I
thanks
appreciate
again,
it.
Mike. I appreciate you.
And we'll keep in touch.
Okay,
Thank
very
you.
good.